Imagine a world where Israel and Iran weren't enemies, but allies. Where Israeli engineers built Iranian weapons and Iranian oil flowed freely to Israel. Where secret agents from both countries met in hidden rooms, not to plot against one another, but to protect each other. Hard to believe, right? Today, we think of Israel and Iran as sworn adversaries, locked in a decades-long standoff. But what if I told you that not so long ago, they were close friends, politically, militarily, even culturally? Let's uncover the surprising and forgotten history between Israel and Iran, a story of alliances, betrayals, and the shifting sands of power. In the years following World War II, the world was redrawing its borders and its loyalties. Israel was born in 1948, surrounded by Arab nations that refused to recognize its existence. Cut off from trade and diplomacy, it needed allies, desperately. Enter Iran. Under Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, Iran was modernizing fast. He wanted to transform his country into a global power and saw Israel as a partner that shared his goals: anti-Soviet, Western-leaning, and ready to defy Arab nationalism. The two nations built a bond in the shadows, hidden from the world. Israeli diplomats often joked that Tehran was our friend in the desert. But beneath the secrecy lay a fragile understanding, one that would shatter the moment power changed hands. The 1979 Iranian Revolution was an earthquake that shook the entire Middle East. The Shah was overthrown, and Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, the spiritual leader of the revolution, rose to power, vowing to build an Islamic republic free from Western influence. For Israel, this was a nightmare. Overnight, Iran transformed from one of its closest regional allies into its most vocal enemy. Khomeini denounced Israel as a cancerous tumor and promised to eradicate it from the map. The close cooperation that had lasted for nearly 3 decades vanished in an instant. But here's where the story takes an even stranger turn. Despite Khomeini's public hatred of Israel, Iran didn't immediately cut off all contact. Behind closed doors, practical needs still dictated survival. The new regime inherited advanced weapons and technology that had relied on Israeli expertise. When the Iran-Iraq War broke out in 1980, Israel, fearing Saddam Hussein's rise, secretly sold arms to Iran. This covert relationship became part of the infamous Iran-Contra affair in the mid-1980s, when Israel helped facilitate U.S. weapons sales to Iran in exchange for American hostages being freed in Lebanon. Publicly, Israel and Iran were sworn enemies. Privately, they were still doing business. But this uneasy arrangement couldn't last. As Iran's revolutionary ideology hardened, the regime began exporting its vision of Islamic resistance, funding groups like Hezbollah and Hamas, both sworn to Israel's destruction. The quiet pragmatism of the Shah's era gave way to fiery rhetoric and proxy warfare. Still, many in Israel's intelligence community couldn't help but see the irony. The two nations had shared decades of friendship, similar enemies, similar fears, and yet ended up on opposite sides of history. Their old cooperation became one of the Middle East's best-kept secrets, buried under decades of hostility. Today, the relationship between Israel and Iran resembles a high-stakes chess match, silent, deadly, and always one move away from disaster. After 2000, tensions rose sharply as Iran pursued its nuclear ambitions. Israel viewed it as an existential threat, a potential weapon aimed directly at its survival. But the real war wasn't fought with tanks or planes. It was fought in the shadows, through spies, cyber attacks, and sabotage. Mossad operatives reportedly infiltrated Iran's nuclear facilities, assassinating key scientists and destroying centrifuges in covert operations like the famous Stuxnet cyber attack. In turn, Iran's Revolutionary Guard and its proxies in Lebanon, Syria, and Gaza targeted Israel interests abroad. It became a war of ghosts, fought by intelligence agents, hackers, and drones. Yet beneath all the tension, a strange irony remains. Israel and Iran once shared more in common than either side wants to admit. Both nations see themselves as exceptional civilizations surrounded by enemies. Both are driven by ideology, by a sense of destiny and persecution. And both fear the same thing, being isolated and forgotten in a volatile world. The U.S.-Iran nuclear deal of 2015 briefly raised hopes that tensions might ease, but as the agreement fell apart, distrust deepened. Israel's leaders continued to see Iran as their ultimate adversary, and Iran's rhetoric only grew more aggressive, promising revenge and resistance across the region. Still, a quiet question lingers among historians and diplomats who remember the past. Could these two nations ever cooperate again? It sounds impossible, but then so did their friendship 70 years ago. History in the Middle East has a way of turning enemies into allies, and allies into enemies in the blink of an eye. The story of Israel and Iran is one of the strangest reversals in modern history. Two nations born from revolution and persecution, once united by shared fears and ambition, now face each other across a chasm of hatred and mistrust. But if history teaches us anything, it's that alliances are rarely permanent. And neither are rivalries. What began as friendship can end in fire, and what seems like eternal enmity can someday shift again. After all, if Israel and Iran could once call each other friends, who's to say the future won't surprise us again? If you found this story fascinating, you'll also enjoy our previous deep dive. Who really conspired to assassinate Caesar? The plot uncovered. It unravels one of the most famous betrayals in human history, showing how ambition, pride, and politics can topple even the most powerful leaders. Both stories remind us that alliances, power, and trust are fragile, and history is always waiting to repeat itself.